There comes a moment in your life when God doesn't just change your situation, He changes your surroundings. He shifts the room. He rearranges the people. He redirects the doors you've been knocking on and quietly opens the ones you didn't even know existed. You've been praying for provision, but God has been preparing connection. You've been asking for answers, but God has been aligning access. What you thought was delay was actually divine coordination. Heaven has been working behind the scenes, orchestrating timing, moving hearts, positioning names, lining up opportunities that cannot be forced, bought, or manipulated. This is not accidental. This is not luck. This is God bringing the right people, the right doors, and the right favor at the right time. Before God brings the right people into your life, He often has to remove the wrong ones, and that process is never comfortable because we grow attached to what feels familiar even when it is misaligned. We confuse history with destiny and longevity with legitimacy, but just because someone walked with you in one season does not mean they are assigned to the next. God sees what you cannot see. He sees how certain connections drain your strength, dilute your focus, and delay your obedience. You call it loyalty, but God calls it limitation. You call it love, but God calls it a distraction. And when God begins to separate you, it feels like loss, betrayal, or isolation, but it is actually preparation. You cannot carry old weights into new dimensions. You cannot enter new doors with old keys. God knows that the wrong voices will confuse you when He starts giving you clear instructions, so He reduces the noise before He releases the next direction. Alignment always requires separation. Abraham could not step into promise until Lot stepped out of the picture. Joseph could not reach the palace until he was removed from familiar spaces and familiar faces. Even Jesus narrowed His circle before the cross because not everyone can handle the weight of where God is taking you. Some people are seasonal, and when the season changes, the relationship changes too. That does not make them evil, it makes them expired. God is too intentional to allow expired connections to contaminate fresh oil. When God starts pruning relationships, He is not punishing you, He is positioning you. He is protecting you from settling for comfort when He has called you to covenant, from applause when He has assigned purpose, from crowds when He has ordained impact. What hurts most is that God often removes people without explanation. There is no argument, no closure, no final conversation, because if He explained it, you might try to fix it. If He gave you clarity, you might try to compromise. So God allows distance to do what discussion never could. He allows silence to do what confrontation would delay. And while you are asking God why they left, God is asking you why you are still trying to hold on. You don't need everyone who understands you. You need people who are aligned with what God is building in you. Right people don't just celebrate your success, they sharpen your discipline. They don't just affirm your gift, they respect your process. They don't just enjoy your presence, they honor your calling. Wrong connections make you explain yourself constantly. Right alignments recognize you without a resume. Wrong connections tolerate your gift but resist your growth. Right alignments push you toward obedience even when it costs you comfort. When God begins to bring the right people, you'll notice peace replacing pressure. You won't have to perform to be accepted. You won't have to shrink to be included. You won't have to betray your values to belong. There will be confirmation in your spirit, not confusion in your mind. These people won't compete with you. They'll complement what God has placed inside you. They won't rush your timing. They'll respect God's process. They won't replace God's voice. They'll echo it. Sometimes the reason God removes people is because they only knew the old version of you, and God is unveiling a new dimension. They were comfortable with who you were but threatened by who you're becoming. So God lovingly disconnects you before their insecurity becomes your ceiling. And while you're grieving what ended, God is guarding what's coming. You may feel lonely, but you are not alone. You are in transition. You are between what was and what will be. And in that in-between space, God does some of His deepest work, reshaping your discernment, strengthening your boundaries, clarifying your identity so that when the right people arrive, you won't idolize them, misuse them, or depend on them more than you depend on God. Because when God sends the right people, they don't replace Him, they reinforce His purpose. They don't become the source, they become the channel. They don't take the credit, they give God the glory. And you'll look back and realize that the separation you resented was the alignment you needed. that the doors that closed were protecting you from relationships that could not go where God was taking you, and the silence that hurt was actually making room for voices that would speak life, wisdom, strategy, and favor into your next season as God carefully aligns your steps, your connections, your opportunities, and your destiny so that when the moment arrives, you are surrounded not by familiarity but by divine assignment, not by convenience but by covenant, not by people who need you, but by people who recognize what God is doing through you and are ready to walk with you as He opens doors no man can shut and places favor on your life that cannot be explained by talent, effort, or background, but only by the hand of God moving intentionally through the right people at the right time. When God opens a door, it is never because you pushed hard enough, networked long enough, or proved yourself loud enough. Divine doors open when striving ends and surrender begins. There is a difference between forcing access and receiving permission. Many people exhaust themselves trying to break into places God never authorized them to enter, and then wonder why they feel drained, frustrated, and overlooked. God never intended for you to chase doors. He intended for doors to recognize you. What He has ordained for you will open without manipulation, without compromise, without you having to beg for approval. The problem is that we often confuse movement with progress. We think because we are busy, we are advancing, but sometimes God is saying stop so He can do what effort cannot accomplish. Human striving says, if I just do more, say more, give more, sacrifice more, someone will notice me. Divine alignment says, be still and watch what I have already prepared. Striving is rooted in fear, fear of missing out, fear of being forgotten, fear that if you don't push, nothing will happen. Faith rests in the confidence that God is already ahead of you, arranging moments, softening hearts, positioning decision makers, and orchestrating timing. When you strive, you rush ahead of God and arrive unprepared. When you wait, you arrive sustained. Doors opened by striving require you to maintain them with the same energy you used to open them. Doors opened by God come with grace to stand, favor to remain, and provision to thrive. There are doors that look good, but are guarded by stress, anxiety, and constant pressure to perform. God does not open doors that demand you sacrifice your peace to stay inside. If you have to betray your values to enter, you will have to betray your identity to remain. Divine doors do not confuse you, they confirm you. They don't make you feel small. They stretch you while still protecting who you are. When God opens a door, it aligns with your assignment, not just your ambition. It fits your calling, not just your talent. It challenges you, but it does not consume you. And often God waits until you stop striving, because striving reveals where your trust really is. Waiting is not weakness, it is worship. Waiting says, God, I trust you more than I trust my hustle. Waiting refines your motives so that when the door opens, you enter with humility instead of entitlement. Some doors remain closed because if they open too soon, pride would walk in before character. God is not delaying you to punish you. He is preparing you to survive what you asked for. The door you are praying for carries responsibility, pressure, and visibility. And God loves you too much to give you access before you are anchored. So He teaches you to rest, to obey in obscurity, to be faithful without applause, to serve without recognition, so that when the door opens, you won't collapse under the weight of it. There are moments when doing nothing is the most spiritual thing you can do. Standing still allows God to fight battles you were never meant to fight. Israel did not open the Red Sea, God did. They only had to step forward. Once the path was revealed, striving would have drowned them. Obedience delivered them. The same God who opened a way where there was no way is still in the business of opening doors that logic cannot explain, doors that no resume qualifies you for, doors that no connection can arrange, doors that bypass protocol and defy expectation. But those doors respond to alignment, not anxiety. When you stop striving, you start discerning. You recognize doors that look attractive but lead to burnout. You sense when something is good but not God. You no longer panic when a door closes because you understand that closed doors are as much a part of divine guidance as open ones. God shuts doors to protect you from environments that would erode your faith, distort your purpose, or delay your destiny. And the peace you feel when a door closes is often confirmation that you were never meant to walk through it. Striving makes every closed door feel like rejection. Faith understands it as redirection. Divine doors often open quietly. There is no announcement, no spotlight, no dramatic moment, just a sudden alignment where conversations shift, opportunities appear, favor flows, and you realize you didn't force anything. God simply made room for you. And the same people who overlooked you before suddenly see you clearly, not because you changed who you are, but because God changed the atmosphere around you. That is why you cannot rush God. What He opens at the right time will not require constant defense. You won't have to explain why you belong there. You won't have to overwork to prove your worth. The door will open and grace will hold it open because what God unlocks comes with authority, peace, and sustainability, and you'll know it was Him because you rested while He worked and trusted while He aligned everything beyond your control. Favor is never attracted by desperation, it responds to obedience. The moment you begin to panic about timing, approval, or provision, desperation creeps in and starts making decisions fear was never meant to make. Desperation rushes, desperation compromises, desperation settles for substitutes while calling them blessings. Obedience, on the other hand, moves with clarity even when the path is unclear. It doesn't need applause to proceed, and it doesn't need guarantees to continue. Obedience trusts that if God said it, God will sustain it. Favor does not follow the loudest cry. It follows the quiet yes spoken when nobody is watching. Desperation says, I need this to happen now or I won't survive. Obedience says, even if it doesn't happen now, I will still serve, still believe, still walk upright. And heaven responds to that posture. God is not manipulated by pressure. He is moved by faithfulness. That is why some people pray harder but see less, while others pray calmly and watch doors open unexpectedly. Favor recognizes alignment. It recognizes a heart that is submitted, not frantic. When you obey God even when the instruction doesn't make sense, you separate yourself from those who only move when conditions are perfect. Obedience proves that God can trust you with influence, access, and increase. Desperation will make you knock on doors God already closed. Obedience gives you the strength to walk away without bitterness. Desperation begs to be chosen. Obedience knows it is already called. When Saul became desperate, he lost favor even while holding the crown. When David remained obedient in caves and fields, favor followed him into the palace without him demanding it. Favor rests where obedience lives. It is not earned by effort. It is released by alignment. God places favor on people who will represent Him well when the door opens, not embarrass Him by how they got there. Many people confuse sacrifice with obedience. God never asked you to destroy yourself to prove loyalty. Obedience is not self-harm. It is self-trust under divine authority. When God says wait, desperation hears delay. Obedience hears protection. When God says no, desperation hears rejection. Obedience hears redirection. And because obedience listens differently, it walks differently, it doesn't chase attention, it attracts favor quietly. People start helping without being asked. Opportunities surface without being forced. Conversations open without manipulation. That is favor responding to obedience that was practiced long before visibility arrived. God watches how you behave when you don't get what you prayed for immediately. That space between promise and manifestation reveals whether you are obedient or desperate. Desperation obeys only when results are visible. Obedience obeys because God is trustworthy. That is why favor often surprises people who weren't even looking for it. They were too busy doing what God asked in obscurity to notice that heaven was rearranging things on their behalf. Favor follows consistency. It follows integrity. It follows discipline when shortcuts are available but refused. Obedience also protects you from counterfeit favor. Not every open door is God's favor. Some doors open because desperation forced them open, and they come with a price your soul was never meant to pay. Obedience discerns before it steps. It asks not only, can I do this, but should I do this? Favor from God never requires you to abandon your values. It never asks you to lie, manipulate, or perform beyond who you truly are. If access costs you peace, it is too expensive. If opportunity costs you obedience, it is not favor. When you obey, you allow God to defend your name, elevate your work, and speak for you in rooms you haven't entered yet. Favor shows up in recommendation letters you never requested, in introductions you didn't arrange, in protection you didn't see coming. Obedience positions you so that when God releases favor, it lands on solid character, not shaky motives. That is why God often withholds favor until obedience is consistent. not because he is withholding goodness, but because he is guarding destiny. You don't need to prove you are worthy of favor. Obedience already settled that. You don't need to compete for attention. Favor will distinguish you naturally. You don't need to rush timing. Favor arrives exactly when obedience has prepared you to handle it. And when favor finally shows up, it won't feel chaotic or frantic. It will feel like confirmation. It will feel like peace catching up with promise. It will feel like God saying, now you're ready, because obedience has shaped your heart, aligned your spirit, and positioned your life so that when favor rests on you, it stays, multiplies, and opens doors you never had to force because you chose obedience over desperation and trusted God enough to follow him even when it felt slower, quieter, and less visible than panic-driven pursuit. God never sends people into your life to replace him. He sends them to serve as bridges to where he is taking you. People are not the destination, they are the connection. When you mistake a person for a promise, disappointment is inevitable. When you idolize access, influence, or relationships, you burden people with expectations they were never meant to carry. God alone is the source. People are simply the channels he chooses to use. And when you understand this, you stop clinging to people and start thanking God for the role they play in the journey without demanding they become everything. A bridge is not meant to be lived on, it is meant to be crossed. Some people are assigned to help you transition, not to stay forever. When you try to build a permanent home on a temporary connection, frustration follows. God will use mentors, friends, helpers, and even strangers to move you from one place to another, but no bridge is designed to replace the land it connects. That is why some relationships feel functional rather than emotional. They are purposeful, not personal. They exist to move you forward, not to meet every emotional need. When their assignment is complete, the bridge does not disappear in anger. It simply has fulfilled its function. Many people miss God because they get offended by the bridge. They get upset when the person God uses doesn't look like how they imagined, doesn't act how they prefer, or doesn't stay as long as they hoped. But God is not obligated to deliver your breakthrough in a package that matches your preferences. He is committed to your destiny, not your comfort. He will use people who challenge you, stretch you, correct you, and even frustrate you, because bridges are not always smooth. Some are narrow, some feel unstable, some require humility to cross. But if you trust God, you will cross anyway, because you know the bridge is not the blessing. What's on the other side is. God also protects you by not allowing people to stay beyond their assignment. If a bridge stays too long, it can become an obstruction. If a helper overstays, dependency develops. God does not want you dependent on people when he is calling you to maturity. So he removes some connections, not because they failed you, but because they finished. And if you are not discerning, you will chase people God is trying to release. You will grieve relationships God is celebrating as complete. Understanding that people are bridges frees you from resentment and helps you honor seasons without bitterness. Right bridges don't demand ownership of your future. They don't try to control your decisions. They don't take credit for your growth. They are secure enough to help you cross and strong enough to step aside. They don't compete with where God is taking you. They contribute to it. They don't pull you backward when God is calling you forward. And often, the greatest bridges are the ones who never ask to be acknowledged. They help quietly, open doors subtly, speak your name in rooms you're not in, and disappear without applause once you arrive on the other side. Sometimes God will use people who never benefit from your success to get you there. They will sow into you without reaping publicly. They will support you without being attached to the outcome. That is the purity of a bridge. And sometimes God will use you as a bridge for others. You won't always understand why you are helping someone who won't stay, but obedience turns you into a pathway for God's purpose in someone else's life. Bridges are mutual exchanges of assignment, not permanent attachments of identity. The danger is when you confuse access with authority. Just because someone opened a door does not mean they own the room. God alone authors destiny. people facilitate moments. And when God promotes you, He does not transfer ownership of your future to the person who helped you get there. That is why you must remain humble and grateful without becoming indebted in a way that compromises obedience. Gratitude honors the bridge, worship honors the source. When you understand that God uses people as bridges, you stop fearing loss and start valuing purpose. You stop begging people to stay and start trusting God to send what you need for each season. You learn to walk forward without dragging expired connections behind you. You learn to bless those who helped you cross instead of resenting them for not staying. And you begin to see your life as a series of divine crossings where God faithfully provides the right bridges at the right time, never late, never early, always sufficient to carry you to the next place He has prepared, strengthening your faith so that you rely on God as the destination while appreciating people for the role they played in getting you there without confusing them with the promise itself. What you call delay, God often calls protection. We are quick to assume that if something hasn't happened yet, it must be denial. But many times it is God shielding you from consequences you cannot yet see. God sees beyond the moment. He sees the weight attached to the blessing, the pressure connected to the opportunity, the responsibility hidden inside the door. And because He loves you, He will not release you into something that could crush you. Delay is not God forgetting you, it is God guarding you. It is His mercy working quietly while you are questioning His timing. If God gave you everything when you first asked for it, it would expose you to battles you are not yet equipped to fight. Some delays exist because if you arrive too early, the environment would be hostile, the support would be missing, or the structure would be unstable. God waits until the timing matures so that when you step into sustainability, not survival mode. Delay allows character to catch up with calling. It allows wisdom to grow before influence expands. It allows endurance to form before pressure increases. We often want speed because we are tired, not because we are ready. Fatigue makes us impatient, and impatience makes us misinterpret God. When you are exhausted, waiting feels like punishment, but God is often using that waiting season to teach you rest, dependence, and trust. He is strengthening your inner life so that your outer life does not collapse when things finally move. Some doors are delayed because if they open now, you would still be too emotionally attached to outcomes instead of anchored in obedience. Delay also protects you from counterfeit opportunities. Not every opportunity is an assignment. Some offers look good, but carry hidden costs that only time can expose. God uses delay to let the truth surface. He allows situations to reveal themselves so that when you finally move, you move with clarity. Time has a way of exposing motives, intentions, and instability. Delay gives God room to remove what would have distracted you and refine what will sustain you. There are relationships God delays because if they form too early, they would be built on insecurity instead of maturity. There are platforms God delays because if you stood on them too soon, pride would have outrun humility. There are blessings God delays because if you received them before your faith was anchored, fear would dominate your decisions. God delays not to deny, but to develop. What He develops in the waiting season becomes the foundation that holds what He releases later. Delay also protects your testimony. If God moved too fast, you might credit luck, talent, or connections instead of grace. Waiting clarifies the source. It teaches you that what eventually happens could not have happened without God. Delay strips away self-reliance and replaces it with gratitude. By the time the door opens, you know it wasn't you who made it happen. You know it was God's hand sustaining you through silence and uncertainty. Many people quit in the delay because they assume nothing is happening, but delay is not inactivity. Heaven is busy even when life feels still. God is aligning people, shifting circumstances, closing wrong doors, and opening the right ones in ways you cannot track. Your obedience during delay is proof of trust. It tells God that even without visible progress, you will remain faithful, and faithfulness in delay is often what qualifies you for acceleration later. If God has you waiting, it is because He is protecting something valuable, either you, the blessing, or both. Delay is a filter. It separates those who are committed to God from those who are committed to outcomes. It teaches you to worship without results and trust without timelines. And when the delay lifts, it often feels sudden, as if everything moves at once. because what looked like waiting was actually preparation happening beneath the surface, positioning you to step into the right moment with the right people, through the right door, carrying the right strength to handle what God always intended for you without damage, regret, or loss, because His timing was never late but perfectly designed to protect you until you were ready. Right relationships do not fall in love with your popularity. They recognize your purpose. Popularity is loud, visible, and often temporary. Purpose is quiet, demanding, and eternal. Many people are drawn to what shines, but only a few are committed to what is assigned. When someone values your popularity, they celebrate you when you are winning, visible, and admired. But when someone recognizes your purpose, they stand with you when you are being shaped, stretched, and prepared in hidden places. Purpose-driven relationships don't need a crowd to be committed. They understand that what God is building in you is bigger than public approval. Popularity feeds ego. Purpose feeds destiny. Relationships built on popularity will disappear when applause fades. Relationships built on purpose remain even when recognition is absent. That is how you discern the difference. Popularity-based connections want access to what you have. Purpose-based relationships care about who you are becoming. They don't ask, how many people are watching you? They ask, how are you being obedient? They don't measure success by numbers. They measure it by alignment. They are not impressed by platforms. They are invested in process. Right relationships don't compete with your calling. They protect it. They don't rush you into visibility before you're ready. They don't push you to perform beyond your grace. They recognize when God is doing deep work, and they give you space to grow without pressure. Popularity-driven people will exploit your gift to elevate themselves. Purpose-driven people will cover your weakness while God strengthens you. They don't expose you for entertainment. They intercede for you in private. They understand that purpose requires privacy before promotion. People who recognize purpose will challenge you. They won't always agree with you, and they won't flatter you unnecessarily. Popularity loves affirmation. Purpose requires accountability. Purpose-centered relationships are willing to risk discomfort to keep you aligned. They ask hard questions. They speak truth even when it's inconvenient. They care more about your obedience than your image. That is why these relationships often feel fewer in number, but deeper in impact. God never intended for many people to carry the weight of your assignment, only the right ones. Right relationships also understand timing. They don't try to pull you into seasons you haven't been released into yet. They are patient with your growth. They recognize when God says wait, and they wait with you without resentment. Popularity wants everything now. Purpose respects process, and because they respect process, they don't abandon you when progress is slow. They know that what is being built properly will last longer than what is built quickly. People who recognize purpose don't try to control you. They trust God's hand on your life. They don't feel threatened by your growth. They don't compete for influence. They rejoice when God elevates you, even if it means their role changes. Popularity-driven relationships often collapse when roles shift. Purpose-driven relationships adjust with grace because their commitment is to God's plan, not personal position. God often separates you from popularity-based connections so He can introduce you to purpose-aligned ones. This separation can feel lonely because popularity surrounds you with noise, while purpose surrounds you with silence and depth. But in that quiet, God builds clarity. He teaches you discernment so you don't mistake attention for alignment. And when the right relationships arrive, there is recognition without explanation. You don't have to perform. You don't have to prove yourself. There is an immediate understanding that you are walking towards something God ordained. Right relationships will pray with you, not just praise you. They will fast with you, not just follow you. They will serve with you, not just celebrate you. They will stay when the lights are off and the work is hard. And even when seasons change and assignments shift, there will be honor instead of offense, gratitude instead of entitlement, because purpose-centered relationships are not built on how famous you are, but on how faithfully you are pursuing what God called you to do, allowing God to surround you with people who see beyond the surface and commit to the assignment He placed on your life rather than the popularity that fades with time. Every closed door is not rejection, many are redirection. We tend to grieve closed doors as missed opportunities, but God often shuts doors because He sees paths we cannot see and outcomes we cannot predict. What feels like denial is often divine navigation. God does not close doors to frustrate you, He closes them to guide you. If a door closes despite your effort, prayer, and preparation, it is usually because it was not aligned with where God is taking you next. Closed doors are God's way of saying, trust me, there is a better route. We assume that open doors mean approval and closed doors mean failure, but that is not how God operates. Some doors open as tests, not assignments. Some doors close as protection, not punishment. God knows which environments would drain you, which platforms would distort you, and which relationships would delay you. So He closes doors before you step into spaces that would cost you more than they give you. Redirection is mercy wearing the disguise of disappointment. Closed doors also refine your discernment. They teach you to stop relying on circumstances as confirmation and start listening for God's voice. When a door closes, God is often asking you to pause and ask a deeper question. Not, why didn't this work? But, where are you leading me now? Redirection shifts your focus from what you lost to what is unfolding. It trains you to follow God instead of chasing options. Sometimes God closes a door because you outgrew it. What once fit your faith no longer fits your assignment. Remaining there would require you to shrink, compromise, or stay stagnant. God loves you too much to let you remain comfortable in spaces that no longer stretch you. So He closes the door decisively. And when He does, going back is no longer an option. Redirection requires courage because it often leads into unfamiliar territory. But unfamiliar does not mean unsafe when God is directing your steps. Closed doors also expose misplaced identity. If your worth is tied to a specific opportunity, title, or role, a closed door will feel devastating. But when your identity is rooted in God, redirection feels like guidance rather than loss. God does not remove doors to strip you of value. He redirects you to reveal it. He wants you to know that your calling is bigger than one door and your purpose is not dependent on one path. Redirection often comes without explanation. God does not always tell you where you are going next. He simply tells you to move. That is where faith matures. You learn to walk without a map, trusting that obedience will reveal the next step. Many times the new direction only makes sense after you arrive. Looking back, you realize that if the first door had opened, you would have missed the very thing you were praying for. Some closed doors are loud and painful. Others are quiet and confusing. But all redirections from God carry peace if you listen closely. Even in disappointment, there is a subtle assurance that something greater is ahead. That peace is confirmation that God is involved. Redirection may disrupt your plans, but it always aligns with God's purpose. When God redirects you, He is not setting you back, He is setting you up. The detour leads to a broader view, deeper strength, and greater clarity. What looked like an ending becomes a turning point. And eventually, you stop asking why that door closed because you are too busy walking through the one God opened instead, realizing that the closed door saved you from settling and positioned you for a greater assignment that required a different entrance, a different environment, and a deeper level of trust in God's guidance as He leads you forward with precision, intention, and purpose beyond what you originally imagined. God's favor does not place you where effort alone can take you. It positions you where only grace can explain your arrival. There are rooms you will enter that your resume cannot justify, tables you will sit at that your background did not prepare you for, and opportunities that cannot be traced back to human logic. That is the signature of favor. Favor is not the reward for grinding harder. It is the result of alignment with God's will. When favor rests on your life, it accelerates what effort would take years to accomplish and opens access that striving could never secure. Effort is important, but effort has limits. You can work hard and still be overlooked. You can be qualified and still be ignored. Favor transcends qualification without dishonoring preparation. God never wastes your effort. He uses it as a foundation, then releases favor to lift you beyond what your strength can achieve. That is why favor often looks unfair to observers. They see the promotion but not the process. They see the open door but not the years of obedience behind it. Favor is not random, it is strategic grace. When God places favor on you, He changes how people perceive you. The same people who once questioned you begin to advocate for you. Decision makers who never noticed you suddenly remember your name. Opportunities find you without your pursuit. That is not coincidence, that is God adjusting the atmosphere. Favor does not make you arrogant. It makes you humble because you know you did not earn everything you received. You become aware that if God's hand ever lifted, effort alone could not sustain you. Favor also carries responsibility. God positions you where effort alone could never place you because He trusts you to represent Him well there. Favor is not about status, it is about stewardship. God gives access to those who will honor Him with influence. That is why character matters more than charisma when favor is involved. God will not elevate you if elevation will expose you. He positions you when humility, integrity, and obedience are strong enough to handle visibility. Effort can open doors, but favor keeps them open. Effort can introduce you, but favor gives you credibility. Effort can get you in the room, but favor gives you a voice once you are there. When favor is present, you don't have to constantly prove yourself. Your work speaks with authority. Your presence carries weight, not because you demanded respect, but because God endorsed you. Favor removes the need for constant validation and replaces it with quiet confidence. There will be seasons where you feel underqualified, overwhelmed, or out of place, but favor assures you that you belong. God positions you beyond effort so you rely on Him instead of your own strength. He wants you to stay dependent, not self-sufficient. Favor teaches you to pray before you perform, to listen before you speak, and to trust God more than your talent. It keeps you grounded while you are elevated. Sometimes favor places you ahead of people who have more experience, more connections, or more resources. That does not mean God loves them less. It means God is accomplishing something specific through you. Favor is assignment-driven. God positions you where effort alone could never place you, because the door you walk through is connected to purpose, not comparison. You are not there to compete. You are there to contribute what God uniquely placed inside you. When favor is on your life, you stop striving for recognition and start walking in authority. You don't have to announce yourself, God introduces you. You don't have to defend your position, God sustains you. You don't have to rush, God's timing holds you steady. And over time, you realize that the places God positioned you were not accidents or rewards for effort, but divine appointments designed to advance His purpose through your obedience, placing you exactly where you needed to be, surrounded by the right people, walking through the right doors, carrying favor that no amount of effort could ever manufacture because it came directly from God's hand working beyond your ability and understanding.